George Whitefield was born in 1714 at the Bell Inn at Gloucester. A three-story structure with a breadth of some 200 feet, a busy dining room and tavern, it was the finest hostelry in all that part of England. Before he left Gloucester, his brothers had assured him that he would soon forget his religious practices once he reached Oxford. He indeed soon met pressures to do so, and he tells us, "I had not been long at the university before I found the benefit of that foundation I had laid in the country for a holy life. I was quickly solicited to join in their excess of riot. God gave me strength to withstand them." It was but a short time, however, before Whitefield had kindred company. There was then a group of earnest students in the university, and such terms as Bible moths, Bible bigots, sacramentarians, Methodists, and the Holy Club were applied to them. When he had been at Oxford for almost a year, one of them, Charles Wesley, learning that Whitefield too was religiously earnest, invited him to breakfast. This proved the beginning of a historic friendship. Whitefield wrote, "God showed me that I must be born again or be damned. I learned that a man may go to church, say prayers, receive the sacrament, and yet not be a Christian. God soon showed me, for in reading a few lines further, that true Christianity is a union of the soul with God and Christ formed within us." Aroused by the solemn realization that he must be born again, Whitefield began a search. My comforts were soon withdrawn, and a horrible fearfulness and dread permitted to overwhelm my soul. But when there was nothing else that Whitefield could do, God revealed himself in grace, and granted Whitefield that which he learned could never be earned. Moved by an increasing zeal, Whitefield witnessed to men and women around him. Of course, such zeal aroused bitter opposition on the parts of some persons, but it caused excessive admiration in numerous others. People began to assert that so fervent a youth must enter the ministry, and they urged that he apply for ordination right away. He was invited to preach in church after church, and he wrote, "I preached as usual as about 5 times a week. It was wonderful to see how the people hung upon the rails of the organ loft, climbed upon the leads of the church, and made the church itself so filled with their breath that steam would fall from the pillars like drops of rain. Churches near at hand would be so filled with persons who could not come where I was preaching, but those who did come were so deeply affected that they were like a person mourning for a firstborn child." The tide of popularity began to run very high. In a short time I could no longer walk on foot, but was constrained to go in a coach from place to place to avoid the hosannas of the multitude. Colonel William Stevens made the following entries in his official journal. June 4th. Mr. Whitefield's orders increase daily, and the place of worship is too small to contain the number of people who seek his doctrine. June 2nd. Mr. Whitefield gains more and more on the affections of the people by this labor and assiduity in the performance of the divine offices. Sometimes whole nights were spent in prayer. Often we have been filled as with new wine, and often we have seen them overwhelmed with the divine presence, crying out, "Will God indeed dwell with men upon earth?" He decided, however, to attempt open-air ministry. Adjacent to Bristol there lay a large coal-mine district, Kingswood. Although the month was February, and that winter was the coldest in memory, Whitefield reported, "I went upon a mount, and spake to as many as came to me. There were upwards of 200. On this Sunday morning, after reaching London, Whitefield preached in the open-air park-like place called Moorfields. No less than 30,000 were supposed to be present. The wind being for me carried my voice to the extremest part of his audience." We follow his amazing labors as reported in his journal. Wednesday, May 2nd, preached this evening to above 10,000. Saturday, May 5th, preached to about 20,000. Saturday, May 6th, I believe there were no less than 50,000. Sunday, May 13th, went to public worship twice and preached in the evening to near 60,000. When in a few months Whitefield again reached America, Benjamin Franklin measured the distance at which his voice could be heard and stated, "He might well be heard by more than 30,000. We are left with a congregation that, before the electrical amplification of sound, were undoubtedly the largest ever reached by a human voice in all of history. And this, accomplished by a youth of 24. Nor did I linger at my friend's desire. to tempt the furnace, and abide the fire. When suddenly set forth from the highways, I called poor outcasts to the feast of grace. Urged to pursue the work begun by thee, though good and ill report I still rushed on, nor felt the fire of popular applause, nor feared the torturing flame in such a glorious cause. Charles Wesley.